Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, State of the State. How's Hogan doing going into an election year? Montgomery County executive race, endorsements, and some smackdowns. County Council shows real courage when it makes cuts of less than 1% to the operating budget. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the past president of Progressive Maryland, Elbridge James, president of the Montgomery County Young Republicans, Dan McHugh, Maryland political consultant and lobbyist Shawn Winkler, and political strategist Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. On Wednesday, Republican Governor Larry Hogan delivered his fourth State of the State speech to the General Assembly. Showing once again what an adroit politician he is, the governor made repeated requests for bipartisanship and focused on the many accomplishments of his administration and how his policies have helped turn the Maryland economy around. But Attorney General Brian Frosh dismissed the speech by saying, "I would have hoped that the governor would have indicated how he was going to stand up for Maryland against the Trump administration. We got a lot of platitudes interspersed with a few misstatements like, we are the first balanced budget in 10 years. Our Constitution requires us to have a balanced budget." Susan, the governor stressed the need to keep Annapolis from becoming Washington. How successful do you think he's been?
Well, first of all, I agree with the Attorney General about the budget. I, too, was disappointed in that he didn't address how Maryland was going to do in light of the budget cuts, in terms we're going to have to make because of the tax reform. He didn't talk about what we're going to do with, some ACA changes. And he didn't talk about what Maryland is going to do with changes that are coming about with the Dreamers. So he stayed pretty much on the middle of the road, not wanting to make anybody unhappy. But I think come, November, the Democrats are going to be together, and I think although he has a high approval rating, it has been going down. It's down like 5 points, so we'll see.
Susan, we'll come back to you because we'll cover the ground about why Governor Hogan got elected the first time. It was
4 years later.
4 years.
Big changes.
Well, that's right. He hasn't raised taxes in 4 years. Shawn, one of the positive stories that came out recently is that the annual Bay Barometer shows improvements in the Chesapeake Bay. Now, as I recall, when Governor Hogan was first elected, there were predictions of doom and gloom for the health of the Bay. So is the environment going to be off the table in this upcoming election?
I think it's always an issue because a healthy bay is a healthy state, right? I mean, we have eastern longshoremen, fishermen that rely on a healthy bay for their, livelihoods. A healthy bay means more tourism. So I think it's still going to be an issue. And unfortunately for Hogan, I think, the recent decision we saw out of the Trump administration to potentially expand offshore drilling off the Atlantic coast could actually give Democrats an issue to link Hogan to Trump, which Hogan has been awesome at dodging Trump so far, but we'll see what happens on the environment.
Well, if no leases are announced and no potential drilling, why would that even be an issue during the campaign?
Because we'll have a well-funded Democratic organization out there.
They're going to bring it up.
And Pruitt's making changes, too.
All right, so Elbridge, the General Assembly is considering a proposal to channel gambling revenue into an education lockbox. This is even though budget analysts have determined that the state is doing a pretty good job in keeping its word to directing gambling revenue to school. Is this something that's really needed, or is this just an attention grabber by some guys up for
It's clearly needed. Now's the proper time to do it while, in fact, we're in good times. Because when we get in bad times, the first thing we want to do is cut back education. We want to, in fact, attack those that are the most defenseless in terms of needing an education for our future. The lockbox thing may seem unnecessary for some, but for us, it guarantees a good funding stream for the future.
But doesn't it handcuff the legislature? And in fact, it really handcuffs the entire state budget, because when there are leaner times, they can't show that they have to show that this money is dedicated and out of the general funds. I mean, the legislature's done a good job. They've met their obligations.
No, they need to continue to look at this as a funding stream that should not be interrupted. And that's one of the problems. When we get in rough times, the first thing they do is nitpick and draw forces down on funding that should not be touched.
But
our education budget should not be touched.
Don't we have, though, casinos based on the idea that money goes towards
Correct.
education? And a lot of people voted for casinos thinking that money was going to go to education.
Well,
So unfortunately, they were sold a lie, right, from Governor O'Malley and others.
The constitutional amendment that they approved didn't say it was going to go into a lockbox. It said it was going to go into the general fund. And the legislature does a good job balancing these.
But our education system in the last 4 years has gone downhill. And the thing is that if Maryland wants to continue to
It's not a
attract
question. Why is it a question of money? I mean, the education system doesn't always depend on money. I mean,
well, there is a lot of construction that's needed in schools here in Montgomery County and across the state, for one thing. That has nothing to do with the teachers in it or union or anything else you want to get to. But there is a need. It seems like a logical thing, just like anything that comes from gas taxes should go to roads.
You just want to be able to raise taxes on some other.
No,
some
I
other
didn't
thing down
say
the-
that.
down the
Not
road.
at all.
Oh, sure you are. Dan,
Don't speak for me, Casey.
all right, Dan. Governor Larry Hogan remains the second most popular governor in America, according to the recent polling. He's got a 66% favorable rating. How important is this going to be going into his election year?
Casey, it's very important. Look, this state went from losing 110,000 jobs or 100,000 jobs under Martin O'Malley to gaining 110,000 jobs under Governor Hogan, because he is focused like a laser beam on our state's economy. And the most important issue of Governor Hogan's reelection is ending the partisan gerrymandering, which Governor Hogan will do in a second term. The Democrats have a 6-state solution that even the Washington Post editorial board last year said it was a phony solution to fix gerrymandering because they don't want to do it. Governor Hogan will take it out of the partisan hands and put a bipartisan a board together to fix the gerrymandering that so desperately needs to be fixed in our state.
And Democrats are going to come to the table, right? Because Larry Hogan's going to be drawing the lines, if this reelection ends up going his way coming up.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think that everybody is underestimating what Democrats are going to be like come November. Democrats sat back 4 years ago, and things have changed.
And now they have a divided party with too many messengers and no message. So they'll have to get
And
their
they're
act
going to
together
get
very quick.
That will end clearly
If you
in the
can
summer.
do it in Alabama and Virginia and New Jersey and other places, you can do it
And
in
Roy
Maryland.
Moore is not Larry Hogan. So we have a governor who's extremely popular and
The one thing I have
focused
to
on
say
pocketbook issues.
about Governor Hogan is I wish him goodwill. He is having cancer surgery on some skin cancer, and I wish him well, and I hope he gets better fast.
Thank you, Susan. You had the last word. All right, our next topic. In the race to succeed outgoing County Executive Isaiah Leggett, there's been lots of going on. The Sierra Club endorsed Roger Berliner this week, while the AFL-CIO endorsed Mark Elbridge. But the most interesting exchange occurred between House of Delegates Majority Leader Bill Freck, who claimed he never heard of former Rockville Mayor Rose Krasnow. Now, Krasnow, who was a 2-term mayor of the city of Rockville and then served a prominent position in the county planning department and is credited with making that office more business friendly, well, in the new parlance, she threw some shade at Mr. Frick and said perhaps Mr. Frick dismisses comments about me are a reflection of his attitude toward women. Susan, what do you think of this dust-up between Frick and Krasnow?
I think it's a minor tiff. I admire Rose for speaking up like that. Mr. Frick is frustrated because last time he wanted to be Attorney General and he fell back.
Yep.
This time he wanted to go to Congress and he fell back to what he thought was a safe seat for the county executive. He is on the bottom of the dregs, even below Rose Krasnow, who just entered the race. And Rose Krasnow is the person to watch in this race. There are rumors in 16 that some of Bill's supporters are suggesting that he goes back to run for the House of Delegates if he wants to stay in office. So I think shame on Bill Frick for not knowing who Rose Krasnow is. She was the head of planning at Park and Planning. It was a very high profile job. You know, if he were paying attention to something other than his own ego, he would have known who she was, and he should be careful what he says about women in this election.
And some folks would say, oops, my bad.
Yeah.
Well, all right, so Elbridge, we're going to go to you. Which candidate is leading in the race? We know that Berliner's got the most money, and we know that Elbridge has got the most endorsement. So who's your candidate in this race?
Progressive Maryland has endorsed Mark Elbridge, and we're going to continue to support him.
Why are you supporting him?
We believe he has some of the values and some of the policies that we believe Montgomery County needs and are aligned with what we think.
Well, but what are they?
Equitable housing, equitable treatment in schools and education. He's talking about finding a stream for funding that allows a working living wage. We're talking about treating all employees fairly.
He just sounds like a regular Democrat. I mean, what distinguishes him from the other guys?
The other guys, he has a track record of backing up what he says and finding the resources to make it happen.
All right, well, let's see what the lone Republican working on a campaign is talking about. Dan, you're working for Robin Ficker, the lone Republican running. How's his campaign going?
Casey, his campaign is doing great. Robin's been out there hitting doors, raising money. He's doing the public financing. In the last 10 years, there's only one Republican that's delivered anything in Montgomery County with two successful ballot initiatives, the 2008 property tax amendment and 2016 on term limits. And once again in 2018, Robin Ficker will deliver for us again and be our next county executive in Montgomery County. Robin will deliver like he always has and will, and take us in a better direction on public safety, taxes and spending, and education, because we're going in the wrong direction on all those issues in Montgomery County currently.
But a referendum on the ballot is far different than winning a race. And I think that there would have to be a parting of the Red Sea for Robin Ficker to get elected in this county. And probably pestilence, you know, frogs and everything else. Killer locusts.
Now, Susan, come on, let's not
No,
be
he's
sarcastic
not
here.
going to win. He can't win.
but to
He
Well, you
won't
said
win.
that. You said that about Donald Trump.
And Democrats said that term limits
And
wouldn't
that's a
pass,
good
and it passed
example
by
of why-
70%. If you want to back Mark Elbridge, a guy who lost his seat on the
We're going
council.
to wrap it up, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, when we come back from this short break, Punxsutawney Phil predicts 6 more weeks of winter. Oh my goodness, I'm not ready for that. And our panel's predictions of the Super Bowl. Stay tuned. And welcome back. The county council is faced with a $120 million budget deficit, met this past week, and approved $53.3 million in cuts to the $5.5 billion budget, excuse me. That is less than 1% of the entire budget. Dan, did the council cut enough?
The question, Casey, to me is not whether they cut enough or not. The bottom line is the last 11 years under Ike Leggett's rule here in Montgomery County, tax and spend policies have failed. We've had 2 significant tax increases on property and real estate transfer, and we're still $120 million short. We failed Martin O'Malley-style governing of taxing and spending has failed. We need some Governor Larry Hogan-style governing in Montgomery County in 2018.
Well, hold on a second. That $120 million came about as the Trump administration has cut revenues that enforce a lot of our citizens to hold back on some of their business practices, hoping that they'd have this
Capital
new shortfall,
gains.
this capital gains and stuff.
That is
so a lot of it is
the most inventive spin I've ever heard.
No, it's the
It's the truth. It is
Elbridge.
the truth.
It is. Yes.
So when everybody sees their W-2 taxes go down.
Montgomery County there were 4 counties in Maryland.
In Maryland,
the 4 richest counties in Maryland had this same problem because of the expected tax changes.
It is. It is.
Susan?
Talbot, Howard, Baltimore, and Montgomery County are facing the same issue.
problem.
When you raise taxes as much as they did in 2016
That
on
it
the property
has
and the real
nothing to
estate
do with
transfer,
that.
and we're
Well, how do you
$120
know
million
that?
It
in the
has to
hole,
do with
I'm
the-
sorry, tax and
Why-
spending
why are you
policies
talking
have
about county
failed.
which is a Republican
revenue was
county?
down. Just as when they employed the millionaires tax, revenue went down. Don't you Democrats ever see the linkage between increasing taxes and the lowering of revenue?
Well, as someone whose taxes I've already been told are going to go up this next year, Elbridge is absolutely right. people are not paying taxes on capital gains in the 4 wealthiest counties. And so they made a start. We have over a $400 million rainy day fund in the county, so in that way, the county executives kept us going. This is good. Maybe they won't have to cut some more money before July 1st, but it's a start.
Well, Casey, how about Delegate Frick actually going out on a limb in the Democratic Party saying, hey, we have a budget deficit? You know, that to me was a striking comment and maybe a way to differentiate him from the rest of the pack on, you know, here's a tax and spend issue. Everyone agrees that I think this budget should be balanced. You know, I thought that was an interesting way to get him out here.
But the budget was a good budget, but that tax thing made a difference. So, you know, we'll see. I think this may be enough cuts, but the county has had to cut before, and there were some cuts that hurt.
All right, before we go to our next break, there are 2 short items I want to discuss. And we're taping here on February 2nd, Groundhog Day. In addition, many of you will be watching us just before the kickoff of the 52nd Super Bowl. So I have a quick question for the panel. That fat rodent up in Pennsylvania, Punxsutawney Phil, predicted 6 more weeks of snow. Is Phil correct? And who will win the Super Bowl? And, you know, please forgive me, audience, but I'm going to have to start with Elbridge James and look at his tie.
Yes. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles. Enough said.
Eagles, and enough said. Dan.
Die-hard Redskin fan here, can't root for the Eagles. Pains me to say it, go Patriots.
Sean.
I think the Nick Foles train keeps running. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Now, Susan, I got a special question for you because this is Groundhog Day. And in the movie Groundhog Day, Bill Murray was forced to relive the day over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're living Groundhog Day every day you wake up and President Trump is your president?
45 is still there. And yeah, it's going to stay cold. The Farmer's Almanac said it a long time ago. They're agreeing. And since my Vikings are not playing in Minneapolis this Sunday, frankly, I don't give a damn about who wins the Super Bowl.
Well, I want to send a little message to the folks that are sitting to my right. The fact of the matter is, in the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys have won 5 Super Bowls. The New York Giants have won 4 Super Bowls. The Washington Redskins have won 3 Super Bowls. And oh yeah, the Philadelphia Eagles have won 0
It could be their
Super
time.
Bowls. And let's just keep it that way. That's a nice round number. 0 Super Bowls. Stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from this short break. And welcome back. However you want to describe the current immigration debate, as a debate about the dreamers or about the illegals, it all comes down to political calculus. For Democrats, the lesson learned during the abbreviated government shutdown was this: the public may not want to deport all illegals, but they don't want the government shut down while politicians argue about who should stay and who should go. Democrats also realize for the first time in 3 decades they don't have the strongest hand in this issue. The public has gotten tired. They're tired of the illegals being involved in traffic accidents that hurt and kill Americans. They're tired of crime, which is no longer isolated to the immigrant communities. They're tired of seeing on television an illegal alien cop killer who, when sentenced to jail, rants that his only regret is that he didn't kill more of them. Republicans who've been outfoxed by Democrats for decades know that if ever there's going to be a resolution on their terms, or at least terms acceptable to their base, the time is now. President Trump is a ruthless negotiator willing to take poor poll numbers and media criticism in order to gain leverage in the negotiations. By simply enforcing the law, that balance of power shifts to the president. The executive order signed by President Trump ending the DACA program effective March 5th gives him even more leverage, since an additional 3.8 million illegals will be eligible for deportation. If you don't think the image of dreamers being rounded up for deportation won't put pressure on Democrats to make a deal, you're mistaken. But nonetheless, Democrats know they have a good chance of taking back the House of Representatives in the 2018 election and regaining a large measure of political power. Both sides are waiting for a ruling by the Supreme Court on the president's DACA rescission. However, most fair observers concede that since DACA was created by an executive order, it can probably be rescinded by an executive order. The only issue will be, when will the Supreme Court issue a ruling, before or after November? Calculus may be the mathematical study of continuous change, but political calculus is the study of continuous changing political landscape. The nation is now once again facing a looming deadline with February 8th when the current budget deal expires. The issue for Democrats is to get to November without an immigration bill, and the issue for Republicans is to press the issue now. Now with parting shots, Susan Heltemes.
I listened, like many Americans, to the President's State of the Union, and I was disappointed by a few things. He talked about all the bad immigrants, but he didn't talk about, the 9,000 dreamers who are teachers, the cops, the firefighters, the people in the military. And I was also disillusioned this week that after only a handful of people in all of Congress voted against sanctions against Russia, he didn't do anything about it. And then this week, lo and behold, thanks to Reuters monitoring the Russian newsfeed, the top spook or head of intelligence, military spies in Russia came to the United States. He was on a banned list, and lo and behold, he met with the head of our CIA and others. That's scary. And the scariest thing of all is, he's appointing a lot of judges because the Senate during the Obama administration wouldn't let them speak. 91% of the judicial appointments are men, and 73% are white. That's scary. We're going backwards. Trump, shape up.
Elbridge James, your parting shot.
Very good, Susan. My parting shot has to do with our president, how can I say that, deciding to weaken consumer rights and protection rights. I believe in allowing business to conduct itself for the betterment of the country, but not at the expense of the poor and the disadvantaged, who in fact under certain laws now being weakened will find themselves more susceptible and be more victimized.
Thank you, Elbridge. Dan McHugh, your parting shot.
My parting shot is I'm very excited to watch the Super Bowl this weekend for John Delaney's multi-million-dollar presidential ad. How fitting, a limousine liberal from Montgomery County running his very expensive ad for the Super Bowl several years, a year before the actual primary even starts. So very looking forward to it.
And Sean Winkler, your parting shot.
Casey, I want to give a quick shout out to the Children's Inn at NIH. They provide free housing for children all over the country that come to the NIH for treatment. They're having a winter fundraising gala coming up at the end of February, childrensinn.org.
Well, thank you, Sean. And I want to thank everybody here. We all have different views about the presidential elections and our federal government. It's a fascinating time that we find ourselves in. We heard from Susan how disappointed she was in the State of the Union speech. And I'm sure some of the panelists here were thrilled by the President's State of the Union speech because he stayed on message, he followed his teleprompter, and he didn't go off message once. So we live in fascinating times where we are very divided, but I hope at some point in the near future that we gain a feeling of bipartisanship. And I know it won't be this Sunday and on Super Bowl Sunday, where so many people have strong opinions about that ugly color of green that the Philadelphia Eagles seem to wear. The only thing I like in Philadelphia are those cheesesteaks. And I like them from Pat's myself, but not from Geno's. But in any event, looking forward to a wonderful but very cold weekend. And I know this is Groundhog Day, so everybody is excited. And I hope everybody has a nice long weekend. Thanks, panel. Thank you, audience. Stay tuned for Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show for 21 this week. I'm Casey Aiken.